Okay, I think we can start. Right, Nicole, on your signal. First of all, hi everyone. Thanks again for joining on the second session of the Open Tech sessions. This is a second session where we'll discuss more in detail, like how to process data imagery. But before we go there, I would just like to say, first of all, hi to everyone for joining on a Friday. I know it's morning, evening, whatever at your time. Also, I would like to introduce later on from Hot that will come to introduce themselves. I would just like to shortly introduce this session before we deep dive in the session, and also kind of frame it in the bigger picture of the technology that those sessions that we're providing. So the aim of the second session is to deep dive in how to actually process data based on imagery. So I think last time, for those who joined, we had Ivan joining and explaining about how to process drone imagery more specifically, but also he went beyond drones. He also explained at least our lessons learned about how to use satellite imagery for mapping. And kind of the typical next step is then how do you actually process that imagery? And this is what Ramya, Ragupathy, and Nicole Siggins are going to walk us through today. In short, I just would like to recap a bit the process, just to kind of let you know where we are in the 7 tech sessions. So the first session was about how to capture or how to retrieve imagery, the focus was on drone imagery, but it could be satellite imagery, aerial imagery, even GPS imagery. So there's a lot of images you can capture. And a typical next step is how do you then process that imagery? It can be in a purely manual way, just drawing based on imagery you draw a building. Can be in a semi-automated way, where basically, for example, import existing data into GIS and then you kind of process that data. That's kind of a semi-automated way, or it can be completely AI assisted, where the AI model is going to extract features from our objects from imagery. That's kind of a typical next step where the human is involved. And what we typically see in the most classical, because there's many forms of mapping, the most classical mapping workflow is that after that step of processing that sensor data, we add local knowledge, local context to that data. Basically saying, look, okay, we see this is a hospital. This can be automatically retrieved or semi-automatically retrieved from imagery data. But can you let me know which doctors are available between which times? Or can you let me know what's the place name or what's the road name? These are things that you can't detect from pure sensor data. So there, the human in the loop really becomes more important. And thirdly, then the last phase is like, how do you access that data? How do you visualize that data? How do you use that data for eventual impact? And impact can be, again, very broad. HOT is known for disaster relief in terms of like mapping for post earthquakes, post floodings, etc., to make sure that basically the first aid workers can get to the people that need it the most. But HOT is also more investing in anticipatory response actions, where basically we look into ways of how can open map data help people on the ground solve a specific problem, be it a healthcare problem, a climate resilience problem, be it tracing and agriculture problems. So the amount of use cases are vast, and we don't want to go in detail right now. That's going to happen at the end of the 7 sessions. This session is actually going to focus on this step, where we process that imagery data using editors. And so Nicole and Ramya are going to walk us through our knowledge about what we are investing in and what we also know about how to process that imagery data. So in this framework, I just would like to kind of, for the people that were not able to access the first session, would like to introduce the second session, which is about remote desktop mapping on OpenStreetMap. And so Ramya will talk us through ID, through JOSM, to Tasking Manager, and Nicole will walk us through MapSwipe for web. And so I think the same rules will count, correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole, as last week. So we are muting everyone because there's probably too many people to unmute. But if you have any question or you want to share anything with the rest of the audience, the Google Meet is open for everyone to kind of chat. So and with this, I would like to hand it over to 2 people that are part of our team at HOT, which is Ramya Ragupathy, the product manager of Tasking Manager and beyond, and Nicole Siggins, who is a partnership manager and amongst others looking into MapSwipe for web solutions. Nicole and Ramya, are you ready to go?
Yes, Lee. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to hand over first to Ramya. Ramya, feel free to share a screen. And if there would be questions or messages, I think Nicole will be able to moderate those like last week. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Let me share my screen. I hope you all can see my screen. Okay. Okay. Thanks for the confirmation. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining this session today. Just following up on like what Lean said from the first session, which was more about collecting the imagery. Today's will be more about how do you generate data based on the imagery that's collected in the first step, right? So there are like multiple steps to the mapping process, and today's session will be more about how do you generate data from in a remote manner or like sitting at the comfort of your home. Like how do we work from home? Like so you map from home. So what are the existing tools available in the open mapping ecosystem? So the first one, so when you talk about open mapping, the bedrock would be OpenStreetMap. So the project, the OpenStreetMap, it's a collaborative mapping project. Someone has some questions?
Hi, Ramya. Just ignore the hands raising for now. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, I think some people might have accidentally pressed. But for all questions, please drop it in the chat, and then we'll ask Ramya to answer later. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to stop in between unless I hear something from you, Miko.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so the project OpenStreetMap was started in the year 2004 in UK by Steve Coase. And it's driven by volunteers all over the world. So there are people like you and me who keep contributing data, geospatial data, to build this open source project. So unlike the proprietary options available in the market, OpenStreetMap has the data copyright lying with the entire community. So it's rightly called the Wikipedia of maps because the map data, all the spatial data, like right from like any restaurant information, school information, hospital information, the highway information, all the buildings, like any data that you see on the OpenStreetMap website has been created by the people for the people. And all the data that you see here is licensed under Open ODBL license, Open Data Commons license. And as long as you provide the attribution to the contributors in the way it's highlighted in the image here, copyright lies with the OpenStreetMap contributors worldwide. The data, the OpenStreetMap data itself can be reused in other apps or like in other applications that you made. Or you can just print the map as long as you provide this attribution to the contributors, the global team of contributors. So how do you contribute data to OSM? There are multiple ways you could do, right? Like, so anybody would be able to create an account on OpenStreetMap as long as you sign up with your mail ID. So you could contribute data in multiple ways. You go out to the field and survey like, hey, like what is the road name here? Like what is the height of the building here? What is the roof color? What is the surface? How is the surface of the road made up? Is there like access for all kinds of vehicles? That kind of activity is called field mapping effort. So you actually visit the field and write down notes, and you use like multiple other softwares. One of the common tool is fieldpapers.org. Or like use some other like mobile tools like Everydoor is now gaining popularity as a field mapping tool. And then there is also Mapillary, which is used for gathering street level imagery. So you keep taking photos as you walk along the road or you cycle along the road or you travel by a car, like keep the camera, phone camera in your dashboard and record information that you see. And then later you upload it to OpenStreetMap website so that that street level imagery can be used to retrieve information about the real world information. Yeah. So all these are related to field mapping effort. These are like actual shots of people like doing the field mapping. But today's session will be more about remote mapping effort. Instead of going out to the field, probably like you do not want to do. And then like from the comfort of your home, how do you contribute data? So I'll be covering 3 tools, ID Editor, JOSM Editor, and Hot Tasking Manager. All of this helps generating data for OpenStreetMap from the comfort of your home using satellite imagery as your primary point of reference. When you do such activity, right, like there is remote mapping activity, generally like people participate together as a group through mapathons, or like it's also called the mapping party. Generally field mapping is called the mapping party, and when it's organized remotely, it's called the mapathon, like marathon, but the focus is on mapping. So there is some common cause for which this mapathons are organized. And at HOT, like we partner with several organizations to run several mapathons remotely. And the focus would be on like one specific cause, like maybe like mapping out buildings in a specific area, or mapping out hospitals. Since we are humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, our focus is on features, real world features that would help the humanitarian efforts. It could be like hospitals during the COVID time, or during the earthquake response. It could be like making sure all the buildings and the access roads are mapped very well, so that whoever is on the field will have the latest information from the map. So finally, on the OpenStreetMap, we have over 100 million registered users on the platform. So if you see here, we have data starting from 2005, and we hit more than 11 million users sometime in 2024 Jan. And the growth has been onwards and upwards. Yeah, before I jump on to next, any questions?
Thank you, Ramya. So one question came that is Mapillary open source and free to use?
Not really. I think like there is a API limitation. Right now, Mapillary is part. It's being handled by the Meta team. There is a rate limitation. But Mapillary is available as a base layer when you use a remote editor like ID Editor or JOSM Editor. So you would still be able to use the imagery as a reference, street level imagery as a reference to populate any information you need on the map. But if you're thinking about like downloading these images for further usage, like usage like this computer processing, vision processing, and all that, I don't think like that you can do for free, because there are rate limitations. But of course, like as an OpenStreetMap contributor, if you want to use this as a reference layer, that's totally possible.
Okay, thank you, Ramya. So far, that's the only question. For everyone who's asking if do we have links to the slides, we'll be sharing the slides post-training via email. So feel free to wait for the attendance sheet later on. We'll be sharing it so that you can access the recordings and the slides after. Thank you. Back to you, Ramya.
Thank you. So anyone will be able to create an account on OpenStreetMap. So after you sign up on OpenStreetMap with your email address, what would be the next step? Would be contributing data in your neighborhood. You see something in your neighborhood, maybe it could be adding address to the building that you're living in. So how do you do it? So most of the people start editing on OpenStreetMap through ID Editor. It's a very beginner-friendly browser-based editor, and you can directly edit on OpenStreetMap through your browser, as long as you're connected to the internet. You need not have like any other separate tools or anything else installed. You should have a stable internet connection though, and you should be using a computer. So unlike field mapping, like where you carry like mobile or like a paper in your hand, here you need to have a full-fledged computer where you are able to access the editor from your browser. So how do you get started on the ID Editor? So here I have my neighborhood area. So I zoom into that area and click on the edit button on the top left. So from there, I'll get an option that says edit with ID. So when I click on edit with ID, this will be the view that I get to see. So all that you see here is the map data from OpenStreetMap. So once you get there, like for you to like familiarize with the ID Editor interface, so there are like multiple things, lots of information packed here, right? So this panel that you see here is called the edit feature panel. So all the information that you see here on the map, the white, red, yellow, these are all map data, like real world features, like highways or like information about buildings or like school ground. All this is map data. In the OpenStreetMap parlance, it's called the feature. A building is a feature, a road is a feature, a school is a feature, like that. So this is the feature panel which lets you control or edit a particular feature. So I have selected something called like college grounds here. There's something like a college ground that is mapped here. And then there is also a name given to this college ground. So all that information I can control through the edit feature panel here. And then there is on the top, there is a tool section. Which helps you like move around, like, so all basically like these are like you're drawing things there, right? And this is the tools area, which helps you play around with the data that you see here in this entire panel, in this entire right section. And then like here you see like more controls for you to play around with the map. And finally there is an information panel at the bottom. It gives more details about like who are the other mappers from OpenStreetMap who have contributed data to this area. So it says edits by Pointer, Mithun, Sabarpi, and then there are like 100 others who have contributed data to this area. So depending on like which area you choose, like you'll have like a different set of contributors and different metrics. Yeah, and the version of ID that you see here is 2.28.1. Yeah. So that's the basic interface. But what is your reference for you to know, like if there is a building, if there is a road, if there is a particular feature existing on the map? So you need some satellite imagery, right? So that constitutes the background layer in your ID editor. So if you had attended the first session, I think like that was more about the imagery, right? Like the background layer is the imagery that you see here. So here in this screen grab, I'm just showing you how you could load or change this background imagery. There are like different options available here: Bing, Esri, Mapbox, then something coming from OpenARL Yeah. So you can toggle between the two. You can also like control the brightness or like the look and feel of what you see here. Yeah. So this will give you like will give you like more familiarity with the tool, the steps that I'm walking through. And once you get familiar with here, the next step is adding data. So for example, like I know like there is an ATM around this area. So when I know there is an ATM in this area, how do I mark this information? So that becomes something like a point feature. So at this point, at this in this locality, I know there is an ATM existing. And in order to mark that, I start with the point option from the tools section. So when I do that, then I get more control here in the features panel, which says like what is the kind of point that you have located. I'm saying it's an ATM. And within an ATM, I could also tie it with a specific operator. So in this case, I know this is the State Bank of India operator. And then the information is pre-populated here. Then I'll add more details about like what are the currency types, what are the timings and all that. So I can enrich the information with my local knowledge. So as long as you know that, so these points could be like very local information, and it's not always possible to find these through remote mapping. But if you have something like a street level imagery, you could like look at the imagery and then derive all such like local information and keep adding them. So that's about like point data. Then the other common mapping would be roads mapping. So again, in this imagery, this is not like a very sharp imagery. So usually you get like very good imagery in developed countries, but I have not observed like very clear imagery in the Asian countries that I've mapped. So this is from India. This is from a place called Bangalore. And from the imagery, you can see there is a road. That's a residential road along this area. And in order to map that, I started with something called, I choose this line from the tool section, and then draw a line along this view. And then from the feature panel, I choose this as a residential road. If I have additional information about this feature, if I know the name, or if I know like if there are like any access control, I can enrich the information here from the feature panel. If I do not have any, mostly like in remote mapping, I would not have any such information. But it's easier to do such buildings and highway mappings through remote mapping efforts, because it's just visible on the imagery for you. So you can keep adding on that information. And then the other common feature, one of the most mapped feature on OpenStreetMap would be the buildings. There are different kinds of buildings that you can find, but most of the buildings in the cities that you see would be like square buildings, unless you go to the rural areas. At least that's the case that I've observed. So similar to how you trace the points of interest and roads, you'll have to like really zoom in to find out like what is the kind of feature you see in the imagery reference, and see if there is an actual building existing. And once you have that, you choose the area tool, and then start sketching or tracing on top of the imagery that you see. So similar to the points and highways, you select the type of feature from the feature panel, then add additional information about that feature, like any local information that you do. And when you do such building mappings, right, make sure like the geometry is good. So there is a shortcut available in ID Editor, which is the shortcut, keyboard shortcut Q, or you could also right click and then make sure the building is quiet, the geometry is good. The corners of the building should be good. You shouldn't just trace for the sake of tracing. The information that you trace should be close to near ground truth. So make sure you use this shortcut to make the geometry proper. And then like there are also like round buildings, circular buildings that you spot in like certain parts of the world. Again, like you have to use the area feature to go ahead with this, to start tracing this. But instead of the Q shortcut, you would use the O shortcut from your keyboard. But I think like there should also be an option for you to do it from the right click. You'll see an option to circle rise the building. So yeah, like highways or points, you just have to zoom into the imagery to find specific features. Points, I wouldn't say like just zooming in. You'll have to like refer to like street level imagery, but at least like highways and buildings, you zoom in, find the feature, trace the feature, make sure the geometry is aligning to the real world, square or circular. Make sure the information is tagged for each feature. Like what is that feature? Is it a building or a highway? So that has to be done. So after all that, after you do the tracing, the final step would be uploading the data to OpenStreetMap, or rather calling it as saving your work to the OpenStreetMap. How do you do that? So you'll have to hit on the save button. Usually you'll find it in the tools section of the ID Editor on the top right corner. And as and when you edit, make sure you save then and there. And when you upload, make sure to add relevant hashtags. So the idea of like this change set comment or hashtag, it's very similar to like what we use in the social media platforms. So I'm saying like this is part of like some neighborhood mapping and somewhere in Bengaluru, and this is for like Women's Day 2024. And then you'll also can mention the source. So some of this I say like it's based on my local knowledge, and it's also based on the aerial imagery. And then I upload this. Finally, like I upload this. So after populating the change set comments, you get an option to upload this data. When you hit upload, the changes would be reflecting on OpenStreetMap database in a matter of 2 to 3 minutes. On the database, it's going to be very quick, but for you to like see it on the map, when you load the OSM website, it might take 2 to 3 minutes. But yeah, it's near real time. The update is in the database, it's very close. On the website, within like a few minutes lag, you should be able to see this. Yeah, some of the key points while tracing like highways or buildings, make sure you use the right shortcuts and the geometries are aligned with the real world information. And if someone else has added information, don't remove if you're not very sure about it, just retain those. And always make sure whatever feature you map, be it like highways or buildings, you tag them as those features. You tag them as either building or a highway or like whatever amenity or like point of interest that you're seeing. And if there are like too much trees because of which you're not able to see the information on the ground, make sure like the one that you're tracing, the information that you're tracing is close to ground truth as possible. I think it's just like a guess estimate you have to do. But you can't make this as a circular building, right? You know this is like a square building. So yeah, make sure like it could be like accurate to the ground truth. And I also have seen like people tracing like all of these buildings together, like one square over all of these buildings and say like this is one building. No, you never do that. You trace each of these buildings separately. So that's one like common mistake that beginner do. And you'll also have to trace the shape of the building in the way that you see it on the imagery, like how it is present here. So if you just draw simple like squares over it, that doesn't cut it. The geometry is good, but it is not close to the real world truth. So you see the difference between these two, right? This is just simple square, but in this case, there are further details that's added to this feature. Yeah, yeah. I'll stop for questions before I jump on.
Yes, Ramya. Yes, we have a couple, actually several questions. So there's a question first on the tagging, but I was able to answer it via chat. So Hasna, feel free to look at the answer at the chat. Ralph asked a question. What was the blue panel in the bottom? I think this was on your earlier slide, Ramya. Maybe we could.
This one?
No, back. Maybe it was in your first few slides.
Really?
Yeah. Ralph, can you check where this one? Or on the next slide?
That's all right.
Yeah, I think let's just skip for it right now. I'll just wait for chat. You just passed it. I cannot unmute. I will unmute you, Ralph. Give me 1 second.
I think I saw it too, actually. It's back a few.
There you
This
go.
one.
Ralph.
This one here. I think it's the blue thing on the bottom. But Ralph, put in the,
Yeah,
okay,
that
cool.
blue one with the numbers in. That's the one.
Thank you, Ralph. Yes, Ramya.
This one. Okay. I think like see like for cartographic purposes, right? Like I think like not just cartographic, but also like because not all the information could be loaded in this particular area. Several of the features that you see here could be hidden. That's my understanding. So when we say like 1,316 hidden features, as you zoom into the map, you're going to see more information. So when I zoom in further here, I'll be probably able to see more information on the buildings. So this is just the geometries when it says like these are the hidden features.
Thank you, Ramya. Next question. Let's just go through very quickly on the question. There was a question by Abdul. Is there an option to add Google imagery as base map? Sometimes image in Google is more updated, more up to date.
Yeah, ID provides an option to add custom imagery. I have never tried it myself, but that's possible. So from the background layer, right? So there is an option here, custom. So if this is hosted somewhere, probably like you could use it. So I think the first session also covered a bit about open aerial map, where you could host your own open imagery. From there, like you could generate a URL, populate it here, and use it as your reference for tracing.
Thank you, Ramya. But just to clarify with that question, I think Google, we are not allowed to use Google imagery in OpenStreetMap. Just to be clear on that. There's another question. Can we delete something which was mapped by someone else in the past but incorrectly?
Yeah, definitely. Like if it's so, there is also like lots of like vandalism, right? Like Ralph has like lots of experience like cleaning up this data. So sometimes like people just like trace a road and add their own name for this highway, for this residential road. It's not correct. So there is lots of like incorrect information that people add, and if you're very confident like that's not possible, then you can you either engage them in conversation, like if you have any queries about it, or you can go ahead, remove it, and then say like this data has been corrected. So that's what the community is for. They always like keep a tab on good quality data on those.
Thank you, Ramya. So there's a lot of tagging questions here. My recommendation, so that we could just summarize it, there were questions about how do I map a school? Do I map to do I map each building covered by the school? What's the importance of tagging? I guess we could summarize it, Ramya, on why is it important to tag, and I feel that the crowd needs to listen to this.
Yeah, like I had that in JOSM section, but probably I can say that a bit. So whenever you map anything, right, like without tagging, like there's no use for that information. Like how much ever like you map, if you just leave it, like I mark like many squares here. These are all untagged, and the red ones here, you see it's all like tagged. These features are tagged as buildings. Without any tags, OpenStreetMap database just stores this information, and there is no use for anyone to know like what is this feature about. So tags are metadata that help anyone to understand about the data available in real world. So tags is made up of key value pairs. So there will be something like building equals yes, amenity equals school, or amenity equals shop, to indicate like there is a shop existing here. That would be like a very different topic to talk about, but tags are like basic to understanding the usefulness of features on OpenStreetMap, and that helps in presenting the visual information for anyone. And also this could be processed to say, hey, I want to know like what is the density of buildings in my country, how many buildings are there in total. If you have the building information, probably you could use that information to extrapolate population data or like any other additional information. So tags become important to understand the real world scenario existing on a map. Yeah. So this ID editor is for like beginner mappers, like when you're very new to mapping, right? And you want a gentle start, ID editor is the good one to begin with. So more questions or like advanced mapping to have more control over the features, we use something called JOSM editor, which I'll cover later. But yeah, ID editor will cover most of the complications for you. It will hide the complications for you. Yeah, and it's very comfortable, easy for you to get started on OpenStreetMap with ID editor.
Thank you, Ramya. So yeah, before we move on, so for all tagging questions, feel free to look at the link that Ralph shared about map features. Yeah, everything that you can map is there. Why, when, and how. It's also there. I'll be passing it to you, Ramya, before we get too much tagging questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Miko. So the next tool that we are going to talk about is Tasking Manager. So this is a tool developed and maintained by HEART, by Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. So ID is sort of like a gentle introduction to OpenStreetMap. So that works very well if you are just like focusing on like one area and you're just doing the mapping all by yourself. But what if you want to like, there are like multiple mappers who want to contribute at the same time for a humanitarian cause. Say like there is an earthquake or some like cyclone that's happening, and you want to like make sure the map is up to date for anyone who is going to help in the field. So lots of people gather together to make sure the data is up to date for humanitarian purposes. And we help people set up such humanitarian projects and generate latest data. How do we do it? We have multiple tools to do it, supporting like several process of the workflow. But the first one, the entry point would be the HEART Tasking Manager tool. So this tool is used for organized editing on OpenStreetMap. It's not just one person editing on one particular area, but in a given area at a given point of time, say like an area of like 100 square kilometer, like hundreds of mapper, thousands of mapper gather together online and make sure the data is up to date. And when they do it, there is no like duplication of efforts, and they're also like not creating like any conflicts, because Tasking Manager divides that mapping area into several small projects. So let me just show you. Yeah. So the area is divided into smaller tasks. So that like people are able to assign themselves like a smaller task within a particular project area and help generate humanitarian data for this particular cause. So how do you access this tool? So you'll have to go to task.hotosm.org. And the basic requirement for signing up on on Tasking Manager is to have an OpenStreetMap account. So the sign up is tied up with the OpenStreetMap account. And once you're done with that, you'll have to find a project to start contributing. So there are several projects, mapping projects that are set up on Hot Tasking Manager. So if you see here, there's something for the Morocco earthquake and something that's happening in Sikkim in India, and somewhere like to deal with the water crisis. So once you go to this Explore Project section from the Tasking Manager, you'll be able to find like a host of projects. We have over 10,000 mapping projects hosted on our platform. And you'll be able to sort it out by difficulty level of the project. Hey, I'm just a beginner. I'm just getting started on mapping. Show me just the easy projects. Or you could say, hey, I want to contribute to projects in my country, like say in Bangladesh, or say in Tanzania. You could filter out projects by specific country, or like maybe like some projects, some mapping projects require lots of volunteers and they need help. Again, like you can filter out by urgency and things like that. So when you go to a particular project, so this one, I have picked a project from India, somewhere in East India, where they are trying to map, I think like something related to public health. So this is as part of a disaster preparedness and disaster response for an area in India, in East India. A project would have details about like why is this project has been created, like what is the purpose of this project, who has created this project. In this case, Miko has created this project through the Open Mapping Hub Asia Pacific for mapping public health facilities. And then there are specific instructions about how do you, what are the things that you have to contribute through this project. So here in this case, the focus is just on buildings. And then they say like use the default editor, ID editor. You'll have to use the S3 world imagery as your background layer for tracing, so on like that. So mostly like most of the projects are focused on building mapping, but there are the other common map features would be roads, waterways, and land use. So when a project is set up on Tasking Manager, it's divided into several small tasks. So in this case, like there are hundreds of tasks. This entire area in India is split up into like smaller like tasks, so that multiple mappers could contribute to this area at a given point of time without having any confusion or duplicating the efforts. So each mapper could lock a specific task for themselves and say, hey, this is where I want to map. And start tracing out the buildings in that area, so that the other person won't be able to lock that particular task. So when you select a task, right, you can also choose like which editor that you want to go with. In this case, the instruction specifically mentioned about selecting ID editor. So if you're using other editors, so JOSM is another popular editor. FieldMap is for like field mapping effort, and then Potlatch is another editor. So you'll have to go with the instruction that the project manager has laid out. In this case, Miko has laid out ID editor. So you go with the ID editor. You select this particular task, and once you say that, the task is locked for you, and you can start contributing data directly onto OpenStreetMap. Within Tasking Manager, when you choose ID Editor by default opens for you within the Tasking Manager interface. So just remember all the instructions that I shared with you for the ID Editor. So once you're, it's very similar. Like ID Editor is an independent browser-based editor, but within Tasking Manager also we have this ID Editor available, and the look and feel is very similar to the ID Editor. So you just use the same function to map buildings or roads or like any rivers, whatever the project has laid out. If not, like when you choose JOSM editor, you'll have to make sure the JOSM editor application is installed on your machine. But most of the projects, beginner-friendly projects on Tasking Manager, relies on ID editor generate data. So once you lock a task, you get ready to map. Here you see she's mapping a remote project using a JOSM editor, which is very different from the ID editor. Again, like in this case, it's JOSM editor. So a particular task is locked for you. And whatever information you see on the imagery, using that, you begin to trace out data like the buildings or highways. And once you like finish task, all the the entire task, finish mapping all the features that is available in your task area. You make sure this task is completely mapped. You have to mark this task is completely mapped. Maybe if you're not very sure that you've completely mapped the task, then mark it as no. Or if the imagery is not good, then you say, hey, the imagery is not good. Like generally, the general problem we have is it might be the imagery is either pixelated or there might be a lot of cloud cover. Mention that and submit the task, and then you are done. So you'll have to stop the mapping. Like when you submit the task, the mapping is stopped, and then like whatever action you choose, like it's either a yes or a no, or the imagery is bad. The deal is done for tasking manager. So this again, like the tasking manager, unlike the ID editor tool, brings together several mappers to map together the same area. That's a key difference. ID is the editor, tasking manager is a tool to organize several people to contribute data to OSM at the same time. So the process I explained here in tasking manager is a very simple workflow where a beginner mapper takes part in a mapathon, identify a particular project to which they can contribute to, map out the buildings or waterways, whatever the project demands, and submit the task after the finished with the map. Okay, any questions on tasking manager before we jump over?
Okay, thank you, Ramya. There's a question from Winsley. Thank you, Winsley. So how do you properly add a description when adding a building name and correcting the boundaries of the building?
I mean, like description to the building? Is that... I mean, if it's about the project description, the project author, so in this case, Miko created the project, so he'll make sure the project has sufficient information about like why are we doing this mapping and what is the focus area, what are the features that has to be mapped, all that imagery reference, all that information will be provided by the project manager. And as a mapper, your focus should be to follow the instructions that the project manager has given, and make sure you're sticking to the imagery reference that they want you to. If they ask you to refer to Bing imagery, you have to stick to that. If they ask you to refer to S3 imagery, you stick to that. So whatever information you see in the imagery, you tag that information. And if you don't, and in most cases, we don't have local information available about that feature or about that building. So you know it's a building, but you don't know details about the address of the building, or like if there is a name to the building, or you might not know if it's an apartment or if it's a commercial complex. So that you only trace the information that you know, that you can identify from the imagery, or that you can identify from the street level imagery if your project manager wants you to do it. So stick to the instructions that the project manager has provided. Map only like what you can identify. And make sure you code the right sources when you do any tracing, be it the aerial imagery or be it like local knowledge, or is it part of some like remote mapping effort. Like make sure to add the right hashtags and then upload it onto OpenStreetMap.
Thank you, Ramya. Next question. What if the source imagery is not the latest in specific scope grid?
So this is for the project author to decide, right? Like they would have like compared between like multiple imagery sources. Sometimes like people use custom imagery. I've seen like several people like referring to imagery from like Open Aerial Map or from their like own source, and use that as a source imagery for tracing on tasking manager projects. It's and even and as a mapper, like if you see like there is the imagery that the project manager wants you to use, it's not quite useful for you as a reference, then you should get the conversation started with the project manager using the Q&A section available for each project. You can, I mean, like the Q&A section is visible for anyone logging into Tasking Manager. So that'll initiate a good conversation, and probably like your input would be useful for the project author to decide if they could switch over to other imagery source. Yeah.
Thank you, Ramya. Next question. Do they do 100% validation in projects at hot OSM?
Yes, like most of the projects that we do, mapping, and then mapping is the first process. Validation would be the second part of the workflow. That is usually reserved for the advanced mappers. Ralph is leads the validation efforts here at Hot. So he can talk more about it. But yes, we try and complete validation for most of the projects, but there are also like several projects that are lying around without completion on the validation side. Yeah, and we'll have to do gardening of such projects. Make sure we follow up with the project managers and the respective organizations to make sure the validation is completed on time.
Thank you, Ramya. One last question before we proceed. Can a local government unit request for a mapping project in the tasking manager, or can a local government lead a mapping project?
Sure, yeah. We have like over 200 plus organizations registered on Tasking Manager. So when I say like 10,000 plus projects, right, like not all of it comes from HOT. I would say like only like 10% or like 10 to 15% of projects would have come from HOT. But several others, the rest of the projects, right, like that you see there comes from several OSM communities, like OSM India, OSM Sri Lanka, OSM Nepal, OSM Tanzania. And then like there are also like several educational institutions. And other non-profits like Missing Maps, American Red Cross, British Red Cross, they have set up like mapping projects through Tasking Manager. So similarly, like if a government also wants to host their own mapping projects, it's possible for them to do it. So they'll have to register themselves as an organization on Tasking Manager. So there is a process to do it, to register an organization on the platform. And once you're done with that, you have permissions to go ahead, create n number of projects.
Thank you, Ramya. Please proceed. So for questions that we're not able to answer, we will follow up with you via email. Thank you, Ramya.
Okay. Thanks, Nicole. So the final one I have is JOSM, but I'm going to rush through this a bit to give some time for Nicole to cover through MapSwipe and other tools. So yeah, JOSM is a desktop-based editor, unlike ID Editor, which is browser-based. So ID is the editor, and Tasking Manager is a tool for organized editing on OpenStreetMap. So people start with ID Editor and sometimes they contribute to humanitarian causes through Tasking Manager. But once you get comfortable with mapping, right, and understand the idea of OpenStreetMap data better, then you could make a switch over to Desktop Editor, which is JOSM Editor. So ID Editor always requires an internet connection, but JOSM allows offline editing. Even it could work well even in situations where the internet usage will be limited. So like the name suggests, it's a Java-based editor. So this is just a screen grab that I had recently, that I had from the installation on my computer. So the basic requirement requires at least Java plus, Java 11 plus, and it runs on like several OS platforms. I personally use Mac. I've also seen it working well on Windows. I think like on memory usage side, it might take up a bit, but I'm not very sure like how does it perform on all the operating system. But on Mac, I have not encountered any issues. Yeah, you could download the latest installer from the JOSM website, and there's always a stable version available, an unstable version, which is more like with all the latest features. There might be some little bugs, but yeah. I would recommend going with the tested version always. That is more reliable, and there won't be like any crashes or anything that you encounter. So the prerequisite for JOSM would be to have Java installed on your machine. And once you have JOSM installed on your desktop, you'll have to make sure your OSM account is connected to JOSM. Yeah. So like ID Editor, where you require OSM account, like JOSM also requires your OSM login. So you'll have to set this through your preferences. I think like there are two options using either OAuth or basic auth. So this screen grab is for OAuth-based registration, linking, or OAuth-based linking to your OpenStreetMap account on JOSM. Similar to the ID editor setup, here again, there is a map view and then like an entire set of like control panel. But here you will see lot more information, lot more complex information that was hidden for your view on the ID editor. So yeah, it requires some comfort level for you to deal with the OpenStreetMap metadata information. It's also recommended to set up remote control on JOSM editor so that other applications like Tasking Manager. So when we're going through Tasking Manager, we did see an option to open that particular task through different editors, right? So one was open this task through ID editor or open it through JOSM. If the task area has to automatically load for you in JOSM, you'll have to enable this remote access within this JOSM setup. So other applications can automatically load data within JOSM. Without this, when you are trying to open JOSM through Tasking Manager, you might encounter issues. And then like there are a host of plugins that are available on JOSM. Like there are several shortcuts that we saw, right? Like when we're covering ID editor, like the building shortcut Q and O, Q to square the building, O to circle the building. Similarly, like there are like plugins available here that makes it like further easier to map things on JOSM. I've personally used the building tools plugin and the utils plugin, but there are several others useful ones that helps in like advanced mapping. So whenever you want to like begin mapping on JOSM, you'll have to start with downloading data and the imagery. So there are several, similar to the background layer that you saw in the ID editor. You'll have different imagery options available from JOSM, from the imagery section available in the tool area here. And after you choose your imagery, then you choose to download the data. So there is an option to navigate the Slippy map and say like, hey, I want to download the data available for this area. What if you choose to download the data for the entire country? That request will be rejected because the area is too huge and there will be like large volume of data that you want to download. So that's what the red one highlights. Download area is too large, will probably be rejected by server. Make sure you choose a small area and the download is going to happen very quickly, like what you see here. So instead of so that's a way to directly map things on JOSM. But if you want to like contribute data through Tasking Manager when you're part of like a humanitarian mapping project, then you'll have to make sure the remote control option is enabled. So that like when you choose this JOSM editor, right, when you lock a particular task on Tasking Manager, and if you want the data to be loaded within JOSM, having that remote control option enabled is going to help you here. Yeah. So some of the basic navigation, I think like this all like JOSM basically requires you to have like a proper mouse and a desktop setup. ID recommends like a lot of like keyboard shortcuts. I've personally been using like lots of keyboard shortcuts there. But with JOSM, I've also seen people using like gaming mouse to handle shortcuts by themselves. So dragging map and all is controlled by like mouse actions. And like I think like some of these also like could be customized, so it need not be like set in stone like what you see here in the slides. But basically you'll see like there are different modes like when you're operating with JOSM. You simply like select a feature to know like to learn more about this feature. Hey, like I select this particular feature. Tell me like whether it's a building, whether it's at a school, or like you see a node, you want to see like it's a traffic light or a particular like ATM. All that metadata information, you select that feature and you'll get to see more information about it. And when you want to add, that becomes like an edit mode. And finally, there is a delete mode for deleting the features that you want to see. So selection, addition, and then deleting. So yeah, with JOSM, you need to understand there are like 3 different types of geometry, like how you saw in ID editor: points, lines, and polygons or area features, right? Anything that occupies a certain area. So that becomes the area features. Similarly, it's called like nodes, ways, and areas in JOSM. Yeah, So for nodes, you simply like double click, a point is created, and then you make sure tag information is added to it. For ways, it is different, like linear ones. And then like for polygons or like areas, you go ahead, like make sure the polygon is closed this way. Yeah. So for whatever feature you add, tagging becomes very important. Like for this question on tagging, so each a tag is nothing but a key value pair. Key is the highway, and the value for this key is residential, and then name Broad Street. So this is again like a key value pairs. There are several key value pairs that make up for a specific feature. So that means there are multiple tags for this particular feature. So it's a fuel station, and the name is total gas. So this is key to identify metadata about the feature, and that is what is going to make your mapping useful for OpenStreetMap users. Yeah, so data without that information creates a blank map for you. There's nothing like useful that you see on the map. With all the visual representation, right? Like that is that you see on the map, that is controlled through the tags. It's just program, right? Program understand based on the metadata, the information that lies in the tags. See, without this, you don't understand if it's a railway track, or if it's a highway, or if it's a waterway. So you select like any feature, and then say like if it's a building, or if it's a school. So in this case, they're going to say it's a building, and there is a name or like additional details about this building, which could be like an address or like building height. There are a number of information that you could add. So I'm going to skip this further. This is about mapping buildings, and then like adding additional details to the buildings. So ID Editor is like really useful when the buildings are really basic, right? Like it's just square or like circular. But for like additional details, like extrusion, like those are called as extrusions. Like there are several details on the elevation of a building, right? Like there could be like a front porch, like which is not exactly like square. Those are called extrusions, and such details and all can be added better through JOSM Editor. So it also talks about circular buildings. And one recommendation that people generally do is to upload frequently the changes that you make, similar to how we did in ID Editor. Yeah, and then like JOSM is also used for road mapping, land use mapping, and you could also fix the existing buildings. Yeah, you could also like adjust the imagery visibility and all that. Some of these features are available in ID Editor too, but the limitation, I mean, the enhancements would be certainly limited compared to JOSM Editor. So complete cheat sheet, some shortcuts on JOSM. This is all available like online. Like, it's open for anyone to access. And some of the plugins, commonly used plugins. I've not used all of these plugins myself. I've used only like I've used Fast Draw, Building Tools, and the Offset, but not every one that I've listed here. But you can try. Again, like ID is good in scenarios for simple edits and when you have reliable internet connection. Unlike JOSM Editor, JOSM is for most. I recommend JOSM for like more advanced mapping, and also like to some case where your internet connection is not very reliable, because offline mapping is supported on JOSM Editor. Yeah, that's all I had to cover today. I stop for questions. I think I've already exceeded time.
Yes, Ramya, thank you. We're trying to answer some of the questions via chat for our viewers, but I think this would be very important for your participants. So, is it required to have a Java installed prior to JOSM installation?
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
basic requirement.
Okay. Is there a dedicated contact person if I need help with the plugins?
No, I suppose there must be, but I'm not actively involved in the developer conversations. But the forum is very good for JOSM, and I see like a lot of plugins being active. So you just have to like find out the forum online. I can paste the link later, and then yeah, you'll get help from the developers.
Okay. Can we change imagery data in JOSM?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Ramya. We're taking note. There are questions coming in. We're saving it via chat, and maybe after let's try to respond it via chat when Nicole's on the line. Thank you, Ramya. Passing it back to you.
Thanks, Nicole. Nicole, I think it's all yours now. Sorry for taking too much time.
No worries. It's been amazing listening to you. So I'm thoroughly pleased that you took the time. I'm just going to share my screen, folks, and let me know when you can see it. Maybe Miko, you can let me know when you can see it. Oh, I can see it. There we go. Okay, perfect. Cool. Hello, folks. Super happy to be here. Again, my name is Nicole Siggins. I love maps, super into maps. I'm a mappy nerd. And I'm here today to talk to you primarily about MapSwipe and MapSwipe for web, which is upcoming. I did throw some other tools at the end of this slide deck. I do not think we're going to have time to get to many of them, but do not fret, folks. Even if we don't get to the other tools, there is going to be a slide with a QR code at the end of this presentation that we'll share around. So if we don't have a chance to cover them here, you will still have access to those links to be able to check them out on your own. And I highly suggest you do, because a lot of them are pretty cool. But let me begin with MapSwipe. So MapSwipe is one of my favorite tools to use. I'm super excited to tell you about it. So it is a little bit of a lie, folks, at the moment that MapSwipe is in this presentation, because it is not technically a desktop tool yet. Okay, it's not a desktop tool yet, but MapSwipe for web is coming in about a month from now. So I want to tell you all about it. And then at the end of telling you about MapSwipe, I'm also going to give you like a sneak presentation of what MapSwipe for web will look like. So I hope that you enjoy. Oops. So folks, OSM is a great resource, right? But it is not perfect. It tends to have unequal coverage depending on what part of the world you are looking at, right? And additionally, the world changes, right? Roads and buildings are constructed. Your favorite corner store might close. Something that got mapped last year might not still be there this year, right? And organizations are also expanding the ways that they use geospatial data to inform their actions. New ways of using data can require different, detailed, and more accurate data. So for example, a simple base map of knowing where neighborhoods are in relation to one another requires less data than what is needed to predict the amount of families impacted by a flood, for example. So MapSwipe is here to help us address some of these challenges in OpenStreetMap. Now, you can see here that many diverse communities and organizations throughout the world have requested projects be created using MapSwipe. So you can see on the map here, these are all the places where projects have been created. You can see that there are lots of them in Africa, also in Asia, also in a lot of them over here in the Caribbean. So MapSwipe was additionally created to be a preparation tool for the tasking manager. So if you've spent any amount of time on the tasking manager, you may have noticed, especially if you're mapping in a rural area, that you end up in tasks that don't have any of the feature that you're looking for. So for example, if you're looking for buildings, you might end up in just a forest or a field. You look around, there's no building, so then you need to select that the area is mapped, right? Because there is no feature there. And then you get to the next task, and lo and behold, there's also none of the feature there, right? This is really common when you're working in rural areas, and this can waste a lot of time. So MapSwipe was devised to help us with this problem. So just to give you a visualization of how this looks. So if you put a project up on the tasking manager, before putting it through MapSwipe, you can see here in this image on the left that you need to go through each of these tasks, right? Each of these tiles to determine if there's buildings in them. But if you put your GeoJSON through MapSwipe first, what happens is people look at the area and they indicate if the feature is there. And then when you put that data onto the tasking manager, you can see that you only have the areas where people have indicated that feature exists, right? The tasking manager kind of sucks itself to these tasks, and you don't have to go through all of this empty area where there are no buildings. So just a little bit about how to use MapSwipe. So it is a mobile app, right? So you do need to go to either the Play Store or the App Store. It is available for iOS or Android, and download the app and install it. So it looks a little bit like this. Miko, if you already put it in the chat, great. So you can see the link for MapSwipe in the chat there. And this is what it looks like as you get it set up. You also do need to choose a username and a password. You can also agree to use your OSM username. However, this is a completely separate account from your OpenStreetMap account, because when you are swiping and using MapSwipe, you're not actually entering the data into OpenStreetMap. You're entering it into an open database that exists on the MapSwipe website. So you can also find all of the data that has gone through MapSwipe on the MapSwipe website. If that's something that interests you, you can download various versions of it and use it for all of your geospatial needs. There are three main project types on MapSwipe, and that is find, compare, and validate. So let me tell you just a little bit about these three project types. So the first, right, this is like the first project, and one of the more common projects is called the Find project. This is where you are looking for a feature, some kind of feature. Most common is buildings, but you can also look for roads. You can also look for deforestation. You can also look for ponds, bodies of water, things like that. It needs to be something that you can see from a satellite. And the way that this works, it's like Tinder for mapping, okay? So you use a swiping and tapping process with your hands on your mobile device to indicate if there's features or not. So you can see here in the middle, if you see something, right, in one of the images, so if you see buildings, you can see here at the top, the device is reminding you what you're looking for. You want to tap just once, and that turns the tile this kind of lighter green color to indicate that that feature is present. If you are not sure if the feature is present, you can tap 2 times, and that will turn it a yellow color to indicate that you're unsure. And MapSwipe also helps us remove portions of the mapping that will be difficult to map on the tasking manager. So for example, if there is imagery is missing, or if there is cloud cover, you can indicate that with 3 taps to indicate that it's bad imagery. And if you've kind of messed up along the way, you can also tap again, and that will return it to its original state. So this is the first type and one of the more common project types. Another project type we have here is called the compare project. So this is when you look at 2 sets of satellite imagery to indicate some type of change. So you can see here, it says you are looking for new or changed buildings, right? And the top here has the before imagery, and underneath is the after imagery. So you see this often in places where there's been, for example, a flood. You could look at the pre-flood image before and after and indicate where the changes are. You also see this quite commonly in projects about forests being cut down and forest loss. So that is the second type. The third type of project is one that we call the validate project. And this is where you're able to look at existing information on OpenStreetMap. It can also be pulled in directly through the tasking manager by project to see how the mapping is doing. Has things changed? Does this area need to be remapped? So in this type of task, you're asked, does the shape outline a building, right? So you can see here, you got this building in the middle, you have the shape around it, and you can indicate yes, like this looks pretty good in this image. Or you can indicate no, it doesn't match. You can indicate if you're not sure. And there's also another option here that isn't displayed on here that's a bit new, which is called the offset. So if you're looking at this and you think to yourself, yes, that looks like a building and it looks like that building, but it's a little bit off to the right. Maybe the person mapped to a different imagery, for example. There is also that option as well. And you can also hold down to make the building vanish and reappear if you want to see what it looks like without the overlay on top of it. So those are the 3 task types. So once you're ready, you see something that looks a little bit like this, right? So you have all the different projects here. When you tap into one, there is a little set of instructions. Sometimes there's some background about like what the project is, why it's up there. And there is also a tutorial for every project, which I would really, really recommend going through. It shows you, it reminds you how the tapping works. It also shows you what to look for. Very, very helpful. So if you do get onto MapSwipe and want to play around, I would highly recommend doing the tutorial for each project type. There are also ways, folks, to track your contributions. So you can see here on the device, this is a little bit what it looks like. So you have the missions here on the left-hand side, and then you have your profile. So you have your name, and there's also like a badge and level system. So you can see this person, Johnny H, here is on level 7, which is called Getting the GIST, the gist of it, which I think is quite funny. And it also has things like the total swipes, total time spent swiping, and like how many organizations you've supported. You can't see it so well in this screenshot, but if you scroll down a little bit, there's also a heat map that shows kind of like your contributions over time, which is pretty cool. And if you just can't get enough of your stats and you want more, you can also go to the MapSwipe website, and there is a community dashboard where you can see a lot more information, including a heat map of where the swipes have happened. So that's pretty cool. So like I said, folks, this is generally a mobile app at the moment. However, if you do by chance have an M1 Mac, there is actually a version that you can download to your computer. However, it does show up as this kind of like tiny mini phone on your screen, which I think is quite funny. And I've been having a good time playing around with it. But I don't know if this is everybody's, if everyone is interested in having this tiny phone screen on their computer, but it is an option for you if you do have an M1 Mac. Otherwise, I would suggest using the mobile device. But with that said, folks, super exciting news. We have been thinking about getting MapSwipe made into a web version for a while. And it is finally happening. It is currently in progress, and it is due to be launched in about a month or so from now. It's looking like a mid-April launch, and this will allow folks not only to look at it on the phone. Maybe you don't want to download an app to your phone. Maybe you have limitations. Maybe you don't have a phone. There will also be the opportunity soon to look at this on the web, and this will actually be synced with the mobile version. So that will be the same projects on both the web and the app, so you don't need to worry about missing anything depending on what versions. The stats will be the same as well. So we're really looking forward to this. And I want to just give you a sneak peek about what this is going to look like. So this here is kind of like a little bit of a beta. You can see it says app beta, right? But this is the general look of what it's going to look like. You have your user up here, you have your projects, and then these are the projects here. So I mentioned earlier the 3 project types, they'll be the same on the web. So the first one is the find project, right? So in most cases, it has to do with finding buildings. So this will be like the front page of a find project for the buildings. And you can see a little bit about it here, and you can see how many contributors and the percentage. And this is what it will look like on the computer, right? So there's a little bit of more space. When you're on the phone, you have the 6 tiles kind of up and down vertically, and this one goes a bit more horizontally, so you can kind of move through. There's also buttons to make things bigger if you want to have an even bigger view. And each project has a little set of instructions here. And one thing I find really cool about the web version is that when you click on the tiles here, right, you also will see yes, no, and maybe. And that's something that's not available in the app version, but I find it really helpful because sometimes I find the colors a little bit difficult. And so this is definitely an improvement for the web version, is the fact that it will say yes, no, or maybe. And you can also see this little map here to indicate where you are in the world. And if you forget how to use the web version, no worries. There's also indication here, which buttons to use. And yeah, hopefully that works for you. You can also see here on the second project type, which is change detection. So remember, this is the one where we're looking at before and after imagery to see if there is any change. So this project in specific here is looking at monitoring forest change in an area called El Carmen in Mexico. So this is what it will look like on the web version. So instead of being stacked up and down, it will be stacked side to side here, and you can look at the before image and the after image and see if there is any change, right? So you see you have your options down here. Thanks for all the hearts, folks. No change, change, not sure, or bad imagery. So that's pretty cool. There's also a little thing here that indicates how it works and also where you are in the world. And the final project type, just like on the app, folks, is the footprint validation. This is the one where you're able to look at existing OpenStreetMap data and indicate if it is well mapped or it needs to be remapped. And that one looks a little bit like this. So you can see here this little tiny building here. It's trying to indicate, like, is this building well mapped or not? You can also use this little eyeball up here to turn that overlay on and off so you can get a better feel. And again, here the options are on the bottom that you can play around with. And like the other projects, folks, there is, again, a little tutorial that reminds you how things work with the map. So we are very excited about this. I can personally say I'm super excited about it, that it will be coming in just about a month. So that is MapSwipe. Just want to check and see if there's any questions from the group.
Okay, so yes, questions. So questions for you, Nicole. First question, someone's already interested. How do we create tasks on MapSwipe? And that's asking manager.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So how do we create tasks on MapSwipe? So if you are an organization that is interested in getting your own projects up on MapSwipe, if you go to the MapSwipe website, there is actually a form that you can fill in for interested parties. So you can say, like, who you are, why you want to create projects, you know, what cause you're looking to solve. And then someone will get in touch with you and they will walk you through an onboarding process so you can learn how things work from the back end of the app and get things set up for your organization. I hope that helps answer your question, but if not, please ask any follow-up question in the chat.
Thank you, Nicole. So I think a lot of OSM communities are already excited for this. Another question before we proceed to the next one, since we're a bit of lagging time. I think there needs to be a clarification that, with Marine. In MapSwipe, are we only using satellite imagery is present, or satellite imagery is present, or so all the processes is based on it, right?
That's a really good question. So in general, yes. So for example, with the Find project, you're putting up satellite imagery, and that's basically what you're putting up, and then people can look through to indicate if the feature is there. Similarly with the Compare project, right? Except in that case, you upload 2 sets of imagery, right? So people can look at the before and the after. However, with the third project type, the validation type, this actually does pull in at least an overlay of OpenStreetMap data so that folks can indicate if that feature is well mapped or not. I must say, I don't really know the technicalities of, like, how that is pulled in, but I do not believe it is actual OSM data, if that's what you're asking.
Thank you, Nicole. One last question. So just to clarify, MapSwipe is an open mapping platform, but not OpenStreetMap.
Yes, excellent question. So MapSwipe is 2 things. It is an open source tool, and it is also a community. So it is a tool that anyone can use. All of the code is up on GitHub, so you can check it out. You can also, if you're interested in being part of the community, so for example, if you're interested in translating some of the pages, translating the website, getting the app into more languages, you can also join the community in that way. And if you are a programmer and you want to design a new feature, you can also join the community in that way. But yes, it is not OpenStreetMap. So it is a tool to either create data that we can use to improve OpenStreetMap or to make the tasking manager more effective, right? Because we're getting rid of all the areas that don't have the feature that we're looking for. And you can also use the data from MapSwipe for any other like geospatial process. Like if you want to download it, and I'm not sure what you would do with it. Maybe you want to drop it in a QGIS and do something like that. But when you are using the MapSwipe tool, you're not actually entering data into OpenStreetMap. You're entering it into a database that exists on the MapSwipe website that you can then download from and maybe put into OpenStreetMap. There have been some discussions about creating like an end-to-end workflow. So for example, if there's a kind of a cool project that's in a research mode where a user is shown images of a street, and then you need to indicate if that road is paved or not. And then there's been some discussion about maybe saving all of those like opinions to one user, and that gets imported into all the roads, but it's a little bit in the future. But it could happen in the future that it does, the data from MapSwipe goes into OpenStreetMap, but right now it's still two separate things. I hope that helps.
Absolutely, Nicole. Please proceed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. I see another question in the chat here. Is MapSwipe open source? Yes, it is. All the code is available on the internet, on GitHub. So you can take a look at it. And someone, I'm not sure who, but someone has written like really extensive documentation about how the whole thing works, which is pretty fascinating to look at. So thank you to whoever that person was. And if you're interested in how the backend works, I would highly recommend checking out the GitHub.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah. Are there any other questions?
No.
I can see a question for Ramya in here. I'm not sure if we want to switch over or like what. So basically, Miko, I have like a bunch of other tools I could show, but I do see that we only have 10 minutes left. So I don't know. How do you think we should proceed?
So for the questions, Nicole, we're going to email them back with the questions. And Ramya, Nicole, feel free to answer them via chat when you're more free. But yeah, I do think the other apps, Nicole, are very exciting for our new mappers and older mappers. So I'd rather let's do the other apps.
Okay, cool. So we only have 8 minutes, so I think I probably only get to the next one. But let's try it. Yeah, let's see what happens. So the next one I would like to talk about is a very cool tool, a desktop micro mapping tool that is called Map Roulette or Map Roulette, depending on how you want to say it. It's made by a lovely gentleman called Martijn, who is from the Netherlands, but he lives actually in Utah, and he's a big part of OpenStreetMap US. And he's also very welcome to questions or, you know, if you want to get involved with Map Roulette, he's a very open person. So if you find this pretty cool, you could consider reaching out. So what is this tool like? So Map Roulette, and Miko, if you want to throw the website in the chat, people can check it out. So it is a website if you want to micro map around a specific topic. So it might not necessarily be a humanitarian topic, but it could be something like fixing roads or adding tags or adding phone numbers or adding opening hours. It really depends what's available on the app. So you can see up here at the top, there is a sign in button. And when you sign in, it asks you to basically use your OpenStreetMap account to sign in. So there isn't a separate login. Once you have an OpenStreetMap account, this goes through like basically OAuth. And then you can log in and you can basically begin finding challenges. So this is what it looks like here. So there's all kinds of different challenges. I could only get 2 features on the page here, but one of them is Wikipedia and Wikidata tag linking. So this is a very interesting task. I'm not sure that I understood it, so I decided to go with this one down here, which is United Kingdom fixed building and highway intersections, right? So if I only have a few minutes and I just want to do something simple, but around a certain topic, and you can see here, you can also search the challenges. So you can search by difficulty level. You can work on specific things. Maybe you have a specific interest in roads, for example, you can choose that. And then once you get into the project, folks, it looks a little bit like this. So you can see here on the left-hand side, the map of the UK, and you can see all the different areas where there are buildings or highways that need to be fixed. It says a little bit here about like what's expected of you. And also the percentages of how the project is going. So you can see here, this one has been 77% fixed, 4% were already fixed, and so on. You can also see up here, I got my OSM username in the upper right-hand corner. And then it has my points. So as you kind of begin going through your task, you can also gain some points. So if I were to go into this task here, you can see that there is some instructions over here on the left-hand side, and then my feature is over here on the right. And underneath the instructions, you can choose to edit that. So for example, if you click the edit button, you can choose to open it in the ID editor. Or you could, if you want to edit in JOSM, you can also choose that as well. So in this case, I chose the ID editor. So what happens is it opens that feature in OpenStreetMap, right? So you can see here, I'm in OpenStreetMap. My username is up here in the right-hand corner. And you can see the feature here has been loaded. And then I basically need to figure out how I'm going to fix it. Now, once I've either fixed it or I've decided that, I don't know, this is a bit over my head, I think I'm going to choose a different one. You essentially go back to Map Roulette, and there is a section here where you can choose what you did. So if you did indeed fix it according to the instructions, you can say I fixed it. Maybe it's just too difficult or it's impossible to complete. You can also indicate that on Map Roulette. Maybe you got there and somebody had fixed it in the meantime. Remember, OSM is a living beast, right? Anyone can come at any moment and fix things. So you might end up getting there and it's already been fixed. So in that case, you can let Map Roulette know that it has been fixed already. Or maybe you get there and you're taking a look around and you realize that this actually isn't an issue. You can also let the system know that as well. And a really cool feature of Map Roulette is that they do have this global leaderboard. So if kind of keeping track of your mapping is your thing, or if you like to kind of get badges and things like that, it's a very cool tool to use. You can see here, Christoph's, I don't know who he is, but he is the king of Map Roulette. And you can also see like the different challenges that people work on it, which I think is pretty cool. So that, folks, is Map Roulette. Any questions?
No, they don't have any questions.
They're shocked into silence.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, so it's more on people sharing their love for this training, Nicole and Ramya. So in order for us to document that love, I would like to request the people of this call to answer this very quick feedback form so that we could share the love and effort that Nicole and Ramya has given us today. So I'm going to share the link here. Feel free to add a message or feedback. How do we improve this? Because that's the best way we could thank our trainers for today. Yes, the slide that Ramya and Nicole is sharing right now is a link of the tools that they shared and plus more. So feel free to look at it in your free time. And please do remember to answer your attendance form. I'm going to share it again so that you can receive your e-certificate. We will be sending the answer to some of your unanswered questions there, the recordings and resources there, even the slides. So for you to get these resources, please do answer this so that we have a contact with you. Yeah, thank you so much, Nicole, Ramya. I'm going to share my screen. So for final announcements, please do share love by answering the feedback form again. And thank you. I'll share my screen now.
Okay, I'll stop my share then.
Yes.
Folks, last minute to take a picture. You got it.
Yeah, let's do a picture, a quick picture for now. Everyone, please open your camera. There we go. Give me 1 second. My assistant is disturbing me right now. Okay, wait. Give me 1 sec. There we go. In 3, in 10, 9. No, just kidding. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Got it. Give me 1 sec, saving it, and we might delete it immediately. Here we go. Quiet. There we go. Give me 1 sec. Okay, so for some announcements before we wrap up, let me share my screen. And I can find the tab of you, everyone else. Here you go. So I'm sorry if we're going over time for 2 minutes. I need to share this. So some quick announcements. So we are going to continue our training series with the Hot Tech and Data team. So there's 4 more trainings coming in. So we have AI assisted mapping, open field mapping tools for individual and coordinated projects, accessing, visualizing open map data, intro to basic QGIS analytics and QGIS for specific use case scenarios. So please do scan the code in order for you to register, or follow the Open Mapping Hub Asia Pacific or the Hot OSM Facebook or other social media to register. We are also giving out data camp scholarships for selected humanitarian mappers. So feel free to sign up, apply here in this code, in this QR code. You can also find the actual links in the Facebook pages, social media pages, and it's going to go on up until March 15. We will be selecting the scholars with data camp by April. And this is an absolutely good opportunity to train on your own time about data science, analytics, etc. We will also have other OSM trainings coming soon. So what you see with Nicole and Ramya, it's more on an overview, an experience, a demo. But we are going to also have deep dive trainings on OSM Diary, OSM Wiki. These are different platforms related to the OSM community. We also have UMAP. We also have Ushahidi. So if you're interested in experiencing these other open mapping platforms and tools that are being used, please feel free to register here. We also need mappers for India. We're mapping roads and buildings in the Sherni River Basin for a river ecosystem field mapping to be done this coming March and April. So we need to prepare the base map for the field mappers there. So if you are on Tasking Manager and what Ramya shared, please visit project 16127. We're mapping buildings and roads, and eventually for the next batch of mapping here, we're going to look at land use and water resources. So it's not just buildings and roads, we're moving towards a more needed data there. Wait, this is that. A better slide, sorry. So if you are from an NGO, a CSO, a civil service office, an academia government office, and you want to start your open mapping journey with your team, let's get you an open mapping guru. So this is part of the tech training project, that tech trainings that we're having. So the open mapping gurus will be hosting free OSM trainings for CSOs, NGOs, and academia. So feel free to reach out to us if you are interested in having this session with the open mapping gurus. So scan the code to request a training session for you and your team. And you can find Ramya, Nicole, me, and Lynn. So Lynn, I think, is on her way to London. Find us on Slack, hotosm.slack.com, and tag us. We're all there. Nicole's online 24/7. Ramya's online with the other 24/7. So everyone's online on 24/7. And feel free to email us at lean.dehunt@hotosm.org or openmappinghub.at@hotosm.org. That is all. I will stop the recording now. Thank you very much for everyone who has joined us today. 4 minutes in. I'm very sorry, and I love you all. Happy Women's Day. Have a great day in front of you. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.